The Master. Baghdad, January 26, 1243. Being part of a dervish lodge requires far more patience than Shams of Tabriz possesses. Yet 9 months have passed, and he is still with us. In the beginning I expected him to pack up and leave at any moment, so visible was his aversion to a strictly ordered life. I could see that it bored him stiff to have to sleep and wake up at the same hours, eat regular meals, and conform to the same routine as everyone else. He was used to flying as a lonely bird, wild and free. I suspect several times he came close to running away. Nevertheless, great as his need for solitude, even greater was his commitment to finding his companion. Shams firmly believed that one of these days I would come up with the information he needed and tell him where to go, whom to find. With this faith he stayed. During these 9 months, I watched him closely, wondering if time flowed differently for him, more rapidly and intensely. What took other dervishes months, sometimes years, to learn took him only weeks, if not days. He had a remarkable curiosity about everything new and unusual and was a great observer of nature. So many days I found him in the garden admiring the symmetry of a spider web or the dewdrops glistening on a night-blooming flower. Insects, plants, and animals seemed more interesting and inspiring to him than books and manuscripts. But just when I would start thinking he had no interest in reading, I would find him immersed in an age-old book. Then, once again, he could go for weeks on end without reading and studying anything. When I asked him about this, he said one should keep the intellect satisfied and yet be careful not to spoil it. It was one of his rules. Intellect and love are made of different materials, he said. Intellect ties people in knots and risks nothing, but love dissolves all tangles and risks everything. Intellect is always cautious and advises, beware too much ecstasy, whereas love says, oh, never mind. Take the plunge. Intellect does not easily break down, whereas love can effortlessly reduce itself to rubble. But treasures are hidden among ruins. A broken heart hides treasures. As I got to know him better, I admired his audacity and acumen. But I also suspected there was a downside to Shams's unrivaled ingenuity and originality. For one thing, he was straightforward to the point of brusqueness. I taught my dervishes never to see the faults of other people and, if they did, to be forgiving and quiet. Shams, however, let no mistake go unnoticed. Whenever he saw anything wrong, he spoke out about it right away, never beating around the bush. His honesty offended others, but he liked to provoke people to see what came out of them in moments of anger. Forcing him to do ordinary tasks was difficult. He had little patience for such jobs and lost interest in something as soon as he got the hang of it. When it came to a routine, he got desperate, like a tiger trapped in a cage. If a conversation bored him or somebody made a foolish remark, he got up and left, never losing time with pleasantries. Values cherished by most human beings, such as security, comfort, and happiness, had hardly any meaning in his eyes. And his distrust of words was so intense that often he went without speaking for days. That, too, was one of his rules. Most of the problems of the world stem from linguistic mistakes and simple misunderstandings. Don't ever take words at face value. When you step into the zone of love, language as we know it becomes obsolete. That which cannot be put into words can only be grasped through silence. In time I became concerned about his well-being. For deep inside I sensed that one who could burn so fervently might have a tendency to put himself into dangerous situations. At the end of the day, our fates are in the hands of God, and only He can tell when or how we each will depart the world. For my part I decided to do my best to slow Shams down and accustom him, as much as I could, to a more tranquil way of life. And for a while I thought I might succeed. But then came winter, and with the winter came the messenger carrying a letter from afar. That letter changed everything. The letter. From Kayseri to Baghdad, February 1243. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, my dear brother Baba Zaman, may the peace and blessings of God be upon you. It has been a long time since we have last seen one another, and I hope my letter finds you in good spirits. I have heard so many wonderful things about the lodge you built on the outskirts of Baghdad, teaching dervishes the wisdom and love of God. I am writing this letter in confidentiality to share with you something that has been preoccupying my mind. Allow me to start from the beginning. As you know, the late Sultan Aladdin Kikubad was a remarkable man who excelled in leadership in difficult times. It had been his dream to build a city where poets, artisans, and philosophers could live and work in peace. A dream many called impossible given the chaos and hostility in the world, especially with the Crusaders and Mongols attacking from both sides. We have seen it all. Christians killing Muslims, Christians killing Christians, Muslims killing Christians, Muslims killing Muslims. Warring religions, sects, tribes, even brothers. But Kikubad was a determined leader. He chose the city of Konya, the first place to emerge after the Great Flood, to realize his big dream. Now, in Konya there lives a scholar you may or may not have heard of. His name is Maulana Jalal ad-Din, but he often goes by the name Rumi. I have had the pleasure of meeting him, and not only that, of studying with him, first as his teacher, then, upon his father's death, as his mentor, and, after years, as his student. Yes, my friend, I became a student of my student, so talented and judicious was he. After a point I had nothing else to teach him and started to learn from him instead. His father was a brilliant scholar, too. But Rumi has a quality that very few scholars ever have, the ability to dig deep below the husk of religion and pull out from its core the gem that is universal and eternal. I want you to know that these are not solely my personal thoughts. When Rumi met the great mystic, druggist, and perfumist Farid-ud-Din Attar as a young man, Attar said of him, "This boy will open a gate in the heart of love and throw a flame into the hearts of all mystic lovers." Likewise when Ibn Arabi, the distinguished philosopher, writer, and mystic, saw the young Rumi walking behind his father one day, he exclaimed, "Glory be to God, an ocean is walking behind a lake." As young as the age of 24, Rumi became a spiritual leader. Today, 13 years later, the residents of Konya look up to him as a role model, and every Friday people from all over the region flock to the city to listen to his sermons. He has excelled at law, philosophy, theology, astronomy, history, chemistry, and algebra. Already he is said to have 10,000 disciples. His followers hang upon his every word and see him as a great enlightener who will generate a significant positive change in the history of Islam, if not in the history of the world. But to me Rumi has always been like a son. I promised his late father that I would always keep an eye on him. And now that I am an old man who is nearing his final days, I want to make sure he is in the right company. You see, as remarkable and successful as he no doubt is, Rumi himself has several times confided in me that he feels inwardly dissatisfied. There is something missing in his life, an emptiness that neither his family nor his disciples can fill. Once I told him, though he was anything but raw, he wasn't burned either. His cup was full to the brim, and yet he needed to have the door to his soul opened so that the waters of love could flow in and out. When he asked me how this could be done, I told him he needed a companion, a friend of the path, and reminded him that the Quran says, "Believers are each other's mirrors." Had the subject not come up again, I might have forgotten about it completely, but on the day I left Konya, Rumi came to me to ask my opinion on a recurrent dream that had been bothering him. He told me that in his dream he was searching for someone in a big, bustling city in a land far away. Words in Arabic. Delightful sunsets. Mulberry trees and silkworms waiting patiently in secretive cocoons for their moment to arrive. Then he saw himself in the courtyard of his house, sitting by the well with a lantern in his hand, weeping. At the outset I had no idea what the fragments in his dreams indicated. Nothing seemed familiar. But then one day, after I had received a silk scarf as a gift, the answer came to me and the riddle was solved. I remembered how you were fond of silk and silkworms. I recalled the wonderful things I had heard about your Tariqa. And it dawned upon me that the place Rumi saw in his dreams was none other than your dervish lodge. In short, my brother, I can't help wondering whether Rumi's companion lives under your roof. Hence the reason I write this letter. I don't know if there is such a person in your lodge. But if there is, I leave it in your hands to inform him about the destiny that awaits him. If you and I can play even a minute role in helping two rivers meet and flow into the ocean of divine love as one single watercourse, if we can help two good friends of God to meet, I will count myself blessed. There is, however, one thing you need to take into consideration. Rumi might be an influential man adored and respected by many, but that doesn't mean he does not have critics. He does. Furthermore, such a flowing together might generate discontent and opposition and cause rivalries beyond our comprehension. His fondness of his companion might also cause problems in his family and inner circle. The person who is openly loved by someone who is admired by so many people is bound to draw the envy, if not the hatred, of others. All of this might put the companion of Rumi in unpredictable danger. In other words, my brother, the person you send to Konya might never make it back. Therefore, before reaching a decision as to how to reveal this letter to Rumi's companion, I ask you to give the matter considerable thought. I am sorry to put you in a difficult position, but as we both know, God never burdens us with more than we can bear. I look forward to your answer and trust that whatever the outcome, you will take the right steps in the right direction. May the light of faith never cease to shine upon you and your dervishes, Master Syed Burhanuddin Shams. Baghdad, December 18, 1243. Beyond dangling icicles and snow-covered roads, a messenger appeared in the distance. He said he came from Kayseri, and caused a stir among the dervishes, who knew visitors to be scarcer than sweet summer grapes at this time of the year. A messenger with a message urgent enough to be carried through snowstorms could only mean one of two things: either something terrible had happened or something important was about to happen. The arrival of the messenger set tongues wagging in the dervish lodge, as everyone was curious about the content of the letter handed to the master. But, shrouded in a cloak of mystery, he gave no hints whatsoever. Stolid and ruminant, and zealously guarded, for days he bore the expression of a man struggling with his conscience, finding it hard to reach the right decision. During that time it wasn't sheer curiosity that prompted me to closely observe Baba Zaman. Deep inside, I sensed that the letter concerned me personally, although in what way I could not tell. I spent many evenings in the praying room reciting the 99 names of God for guidance. Each time one name stood out: Al-Jabbar, the one in whose dominion nothing happens except that which he has willed. In the following days, while everyone in the lodge was making wild speculations, I spent my time alone in the garden, observing Mother Nature now cuddled under a heavy blanket of snow. Finally one day we heard the copper bell in the kitchen ring repeatedly, calling us all for an urgent meeting. Upon entering the main room in the Kanaka, I found everyone present there, novices and senior dervishes alike, sitting in a wide circle. And in the middle of the circle was the master, his lips neatly pursed, his eyes hazy. After clearing his throat, he said, "Bismillah, you must be wondering why I summoned you here today. It is about this letter I received. It doesn't matter where it came from. Suffice it to say that it drew my attention to a subject of great consequence. Baba Zaman paused briefly and stared out the window. He looked fatigued, thin, and pale, as if he had aged considerably during these past days. But when he continued to speak, an unexpected determination filled his voice. There lives an erudite scholar in a city not far away. He is good with words, but not so with metaphors, for he is no poet. He is loved, respected, and admired by thousands, but he himself is not a lover. Because of reasons far beyond me and you, someone from our lodge might have to go to meet him and be his comrade. My heart tightened in my chest. I exhaled slowly, very slowly. I couldn't help remembering one of the rules. Loneliness and solitude are two different things. When you are lonely, it is easy to delude yourself into believing that you are on the right path. Solitude is better for us, as it means being alone without feeling lonely. But eventually it is best to find a person, the person who will be your mirror. Remember, only in another person's heart can you truly see yourself and the presence of God within you. The Master continued. I am here to ask if any one of you would like to volunteer for this spiritual journey. I could just as well have appointed someone, but this is not a task that could be performed out of duty. For it can be done only out of love and in the name of love. A young dervish asked permission to speak. Who is this scholar, Master? I can reveal his name only to the one who is willing to go. Upon hearing this, several dervishes raised their hands, excited and impatient. There were 9 candidates. I joined them, becoming the 10th. Baba Zaman waved his hand, gesturing at us to wait for him to finish. There is something else you should know before you make up your mind. With that, the Master told us the journey was beset with great danger and unprecedented hardships, and there was no guarantee of coming back. Instantly all the hands went down. Except mine. Baba Zaman looked me straight in the eye for the first time in a long while, and as soon as his gaze met mine, I understood he knew right from the start that I would be the only one to volunteer. Shams of Tabriz, the Master said slowly and dourly, as if my name left a heavy taste in his mouth. I respect your determination, but you are not fully a member of this order. You are our guest. I don't see how that could be a problem, I said. The Master was silent for a long, reflective moment. Then, unexpectedly, he came to his feet and concluded, let us drop this subject for the time being. When spring comes, we will talk again. My heart rebelled. Though he knew that this mission was the sole reason I had come to Baghdad in the first place, Baba Zaman was robbing me of the chance to fulfill my destiny. Why, Master, why wait when I am ready to go this very moment? Just tell me the name of the city and the scholar and I will be on my way. I exclaimed. But the Master retorted in a cold, stern voice I wasn't used to hearing from him, there is nothing to discuss. The meeting is over. It was a long, harsh winter. The garden was frozen stiff, and so were my lips. For the next 3 months, I didn't speak a word to anyone. Every day I took long walks in the countryside, hoping to see a tree in blossom. But after snow came more snow. Spring wasn't anywhere on the horizon. Still, as low-spirited as I was outside, I remained grateful and hopeful inside, keeping in mind yet another rule. There was a rule that suited my mood: whatever happens in your life, no matter how troubling things might seem, do not enter the neighborhood of despair. Even when all doors remain closed, God will open up a new path only for you. Be thankful. It is easy to be thankful when all is well. A Sufi is thankful not only for what he has been given but also for all that he has been denied. Then finally one morning, I caught sight of a dazzling color, as delightful as a sweet song, sticking out from under the piles of snow. It was a bush clover covered with tiny lavender flowers. My heart filled with joy. As I walked back to the lodge, I ran into the ginger-haired novice and saluted him merrily. He was so used to seeing me fixed in a grumpy silence that his jaw dropped. "Smile, boy!" I yelled. "Don't you see spring is in the air?" From that day on, the landscape changed with remarkable speed. The last snow melted, the trees budded, sparrows and wrens returned, and before long a faint spicy smell filled the air. One morning we heard the copper bell ring again. I was the first to reach the main room this time. Once again we sat in a wide circle around the master and listened to him talk about this prominent scholar of Islam who knew everything, except the pits of love. Again no one else volunteered. "I see that Shams is the only one to volunteer," Baba Zaman announced, his voice rising in pitch and thinning out like the howl of the wind. "But I'll wait for autumn before reaching a decision." I was stunned. I could not believe that this was happening. Here I was, ready to leave after 3 long months of postponement, and the master was telling me to put my journey off for another 6 months. With a plunging heart, I protested and complained and begged the master to tell me the name of the city and the scholar, but once again he refused. This time, however, I knew it was going to be easier to wait, for there could be no further delays. Having endured from winter to spring, I could hold my fire from spring to autumn. Baba Zaman's rejection had not disheartened me. If anything, it had raised my spirits, deepening my determination. Another rule said, patience does not mean to passively endure. It means to be far-sighted enough to trust the end result of a process. What does patience mean? It means to look at the thorn and see the rose, to look at the night and see the dawn. Impatience means to be so short-sighted as to not be able to see the outcome. The lovers of God never run out of patience, for they know that time is needed for the crescent moon to become full. When in autumn the copper bell rang for the 3rd time, I walked in unhurriedly and confidently, trusting that now things would finally be settled. The master looked paler and weaker than ever, as if he had no more energy left in him. Nevertheless, when he saw me raise my hand again, he neither looked away nor dropped the subject. Instead he gave me a determined nod. "All right, Shams, there is no question you are the one who should embark on this journey. Tomorrow morning you'll be on your way, inshallah." I kissed the master's hand. At long last I was going to meet my companion. Baba Zaman smiled at me warmly and thoughtfully, the way a father smiles at his only son before sending him to the battlefield. He then took out a sealed letter from inside his long khaki robe and, after handing it to me, silently left the room. Everyone else followed suit. Alone in the room, I broke the wax seal. Inside, there were 2 pieces of information written in graceful handwriting. The name of the city and the scholar. Apparently I was going to Konya to meet a certain Rumi. My heart skipped a beat. I had never heard his name before. He could be a famous scholar for all I knew, but to me he was a complete mystery. One by one, I said the letters of his name, the powerful, lucid R, the velvety U, the intrepid and self-confident M, and the mysterious I, yet to be solved. Bringing the letters together, I repeated his name over and over again until the word melted on my tongue with the sweetness of candy and became as familiar as water, bread, or milk. Ella. Northampton, May 22, 2008. Beneath her white duvet, Ella swallowed past a sore throat, feeling worn out. Staying up late and drinking more than her usual limit several nights in a row had taken their toll. Still, she went downstairs to prepare breakfast and sat at the table with her twins and her husband, doing her best to look interested in their ongoing chatter about the coolest cars at school when all she wanted was to go back to bed and sleep. All of a sudden, Orly turned to her mother and inquired, "Avi says our sister isn't going to come home again. Is that true, Mom?" Her voice reeked of suspicion and accusation. Of course that's not true. Your sister and I had a quarrel, as you know, but we love each other, Ella said. Is it true that you gave Scott a call and asked him to dump Jeanette? Avi asked with a grin, apparently enjoying the subject immensely. Ella glanced at her husband with widened eyes, but David raised his eyebrows and flipped his hands open to indicate it wasn't he who told them such a thing. With practiced ease, Ella gave her voice the authoritarian tone she used when giving instructions to her children. That's not quite right. I did speak with Scott, but I did not tell him to dump your sister. All I said was not to rush into marriage. I'm never going to get married, Orly announced with certitude. Yeah, as if any guy would want to have you as his wife. Avi snapped. While she listened to her twins tease each other, for reasons she couldn't understand, Ella felt a nervous smile settle on her mouth. She suppressed it. But the smile was there, carved under her skin, as she walked them to the door and wished them all a nice day. Only when she returned to her seat at the table could she get rid of the smile, and she did that simply by allowing herself to sulk. The kitchen looked as if it had been attacked by an army of rats. Half-eaten scrambled eggs, unfinished bowls of cereal, and dirty mugs cluttered the counter. Spirit was pacing the floor, eager to go out for a walk, but even after 2 cups of coffee and a multivitamin drink, all Ella could manage was to take him out into the garden for a few minutes. Back from the garden, Ella found the red light flashing on the answering machine. She pressed the button, and to her great delight Jeanette's melodious voice filled the room. "Mom, are you there?" "Well, I guess not, or you would have picked up the phone." She chuckled. "Okay, I was so angry at you I didn't want to see your face again. But now I'm cool about it. I mean, what you did was wrong, that's for sure. You should never have called Scott. But I can understand why you did it. Listen, you don't need to protect me all the time. I'm not that premature baby who needed to be kept in an incubator anymore. Stop being overprotective. Just let me be, okay?" Ella's eyes filled with tears. The sight of Jeanette as a newborn baby flashed across her mind. Her skin utterly red and sad, her little fingers wrinkled and almost transparent, her lungs attached to a breathing tube. She was so unprepared for this world. Ella had spent many a sleepless night listening to her breathing just to make sure she was alive and would survive. "Mom, one more thing," added Jeanette, like an afterthought. "I love you." On that cue Ella let out a deep breath. Her mind shifted to Aziz's email. The wish tree had granted his wish. At least the first part of it. By giving her a call, Jeanette had done her part. Now it fell upon Ella to fulfill the rest. She called her daughter's cell phone and found her on her way to the campus library. "I got your message, honey. Listen, I'm so sorry. I want to apologize to you." There was a pause, brief but charged. "That's all right, Mom." "No, it's not. I should have shown more respect for your feelings. Let's leave it all behind, shall we?" said Jeanette, as though she were the mother and Ella her rebellious daughter. "Yes, dear." Now Jeanette dropped her voice to a confidential mumble, as if afraid of what she was going to ask next. "What you said the other day kind of worried me. I mean, is that true? Are you really unhappy?" "Of course not," Ella answered, a bit too quickly. "I raised 3 beautiful children, how can I be unhappy?" But Jeanette didn't sound convinced. "I meant with Daddy." Ella didn't know what to say, except the truth. "Your father and I have been married a long time. It's difficult to remain in love after so many years." "I understand," said Jeanette, and, oddly, Ella had the feeling she did. After she hung up, Ella allowed herself to muse over love. She sat curled up in her rocking chair and wondered how she, hurt and cynical as she was, could ever experience love again. Love was for those looking for some rhyme or reason in this wildly spinning world. But what about those who had long given up the quest before the day ended? She wrote back to Aziz. Dear Aziz, if I may, thanks for your kind and heartwarming reply, which helped me through a family crisis. My daughter and I managed to leave behind that awful misunderstanding, as you politely called it. You were right about one thing. I constantly vacillate between two opposites, aggressive and passive. Either I meddle too much in the lives of loved ones or I feel helpless in the face of their actions. As for submission, I've never experienced the kind of peaceful surrender you wrote to me about. Honestly, I don't think I have what it takes to be a Sufi. But I have to give you this, amazingly, things between Jeanette and me turned out the way I wanted only after I stopped wanting and interfering. I owe you a big thank you. I, too, would have prayed for you, but it has been such a long time since I last knocked on God's door that I'm not sure if he still lives in the same place. Oops, did I speak like the innkeeper in your story? Don't worry, I'm not that bitter. Not yet. Not yet. Your friend in Northampton, Ella. The letter. From Baghdad to Kayseri, September 29, 1243. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Brother Syed Burhanuddin, peace be on you, and the mercy of God, and His blessings. I was very pleased to receive your letter and learn that you were as devoted to the path of love as ever. And yet your letter also put me in a quandary. For as soon as I learned you were looking for the companion of Rumi, I knew who you were talking about. What I did not know was what to do next. You see, there was under my roof a wandering dervish, Shams of Tabriz, who fit your description to the letter. Shams believed he had a special mission in this world, and to this end he wished to enlighten an enlightened person. Looking for neither disciples nor students, he asked God for a companion. Once he said to me that he hadn't come for the common people. He had come to put his finger on the pulse of those who guided the world to the truth. When I received your letter, I knew that Shams was destined to meet Rumi. Still, to make sure every one of my dervishes got an equal chance, I gathered them and without going into any details told them about a scholar whose heart had to be opened. Though there were a few candidates, Shams was the only one who persevered even after hearing about the dangers of the task. That was back in winter. The same scene was repeated in spring and then in autumn. You might be wondering why I waited this long. I have thought hard about this and frankly can offer only one reason: I have grown fond of Shams. It pained me to know that I was sending him on a dangerous journey. You see, Shams is not an easy person. As long as he lived a nomadic life, he could manage it pretty well, but if he stays in a town and mingles with the townspeople, I am afraid he will ruffle some feathers. This is why I tried to postpone his journey as long as I could. The evening before Shams left, we took a long walk around the mulberry trees where I grow silkworms. Old habits rarely die. Painfully delicate and surprisingly strong, silk resembles love. I told Shams how the silkworms destroy the silk they produce as they emerge from their cocoons. This is why the farmers have to make a choice between the silk and the silkworm. More often than not, they kill the silkworm while it is inside the cocoon in order to pull the silk out intact. It takes the lives of hundreds of silkworms to produce one silk scarf. The evening was now coming to an end. A chilly wind blew in our direction, and I shivered. In my old age, I get cold easily, but I knew it wasn't my age that caused this shiver. It was because I realized this was the last time Shams would stand in my garden. We will not see each other again. Not in this world. He, too, must have sensed it, for there was now sorrow in his eyes. This morning at the crack of dawn, He came to kiss my hand and ask for my blessings. I was surprised to see he had cut his long dark hair and shaved his beard, but he didn't offer an explanation and I didn't ask. Before he left, he said his part in this story resembled the silkworm. He and Rumi would retreat into a cocoon of divine love, only to come out when the time was ripe and the precious silk woven. But eventually, for the silk to survive, the silkworm had to die. Thus he left for Kanya. May God protect him. I know I have done the right thing, and so have you, but my heart is heavy with sadness, and I already miss the most unusual and unruly dervish my lodge has ever welcomed. In the end we all belong to God, and to Him we shall return. May God suffice you, Baba Zaman the novice. B. Akdad, September 29, 1243. Being a dervish is not easy. Everybody warned me so. What they forgot to mention was that I had to go through hell in order to become one. Ever since I came here, I have been working like a dog. Most days I work so hard that when I finally lie on my sleeping mat, I can't sleep because of the pain in my muscles and the throbbing in my feet. I wonder if anybody notices how awfully I am being treated. Even if they do, they surely show no signs of empathy. And the harder I strive, the worse it seems to get. They don't even know my name. The new novice, they call me, and behind my back they whisper, that ginger-haired ignoramus. The worst by far is to work in the kitchen under the supervision of the cook. The man has a stone instead of a heart. He could have been a bloodthirsty commander in the Mongol army rather than a cook in a dervish lodge. I can't recall ever hearing him say anything nice to anyone. I don't think he even knows how to smile. Once I asked a senior dervish if all the novices had to go through the trial of working with the cook in the kitchen. He smiled mysteriously and replied, "Not all novices, only some." Then why does the master want me to suffer more than the other novices? Is it because my nafs is bigger than theirs and needs harsher treatment to be disciplined every day? I am the first to wake up, to get water from the nearby creek. I then heat up the stove and bake the flat sesame bread. Preparing the soup to be served at breakfast is also my responsibility. It is not easy to feed 50 people. Everything needs to be cooked in cauldrons that are no smaller than bathtubs. And guess who scrubs and washes them afterward from dawn to dusk? I mop the floors, clean the surfaces, wipe the stairs, sweep the courtyard, chop wood, and spend hours on my hands and knees to scrub the creaky old floorboards. I prepare marmalades and spicy relishes. I pickle carrots and squash, making sure there is just the right amount of salt, enough to float an egg. If I add too much or too little salt, the cook throws a fit and breaks all the jars, and I have to make everything anew. To top it all off, I am expected to recite prayers in Arabic as I perform each and every task. The cook wants me to pray aloud so that he can check whether I skip or mispronounce a word. So I pray and work, and pray. The better you bear the hardships in the kitchen, the faster you will mature, son, my tormentor claims. While you learn to cook, your soul will simmer. But how long is this trial going to last? I asked him once. 1,001 days was his answer. If Scheherazade the storyteller managed to come up with a new tale every night for that long, you, too, can endure. This is crazy. Do I resemble in the least bit that loud-mouthed Scheherazade? Besides, all she did was lie on velvet cushions twiddling her toes and make up fancy stories while she fed the cruel prince sweet grapes and figments of her imagination. I don't see any hard work there. She wouldn't have survived a week if she were asked to accomplish half of my work. I don't know if anyone is counting. But I surely am. And I have 624 more days to go. The first 40 days of my trial I spent in a cell so small and low that I could neither lie down nor stand up and had to sit on my knees all the time. If I longed for proper food or some comfort, was scared of the dark or the loneliness, or God forbid had wet dreams about a woman's body, I was ordered to ring the silver bells dangling from the ceiling for spiritual help. I never did. This is not to say I never had any distracting thoughts. But what's wrong with having a few distractions when you can't even move? When the seclusion period was over, I was sent back to the kitchen to suffer at the hands of the cook. And suffer I did. But the truth is, as bitter as I might be toward him, I never broke the cook's rules, that is, until the evening Shams of Tabriz arrived. That night, when the cook finally caught up with me, he gave me the worst beating of my life, breaking willow stick after willow stick on my back. Then he put my shoes in front of the door, with their fronts pointing out, to make it clear it was time for me to leave. In a dervish lodge, they never kick you out or tell you openly that you have failed, instead they make you silently leave. We cannot make you a dervish against your will, the cook announced. A man can bring a donkey to the water but cannot make him drink. The donkey should have it in him. There's no other way. That makes me the donkey, of course. Frankly, I would have left this place a long time ago had it not been for Shams of Tabriz. My curiosity about him kept me anchored here. I had never met anyone like him before. He feared no one and obeyed no one. Even the cook respected him. If there ever were a role model for me in this lodge, it was Shams with his charm, dignity, and unruliness. Not the humble old master. Yes, Shams of Tabriz was my hero. After seeing him, I decided I didn't need to turn myself into a meek dervish. If I spent enough time next to him, I could become just as brash, steadfast, and rebellious. So when autumn came and I realized that Shams was leaving for good, I decided to leave with him. Having made up my mind, I went to see Baba Zaman and found him sitting, reading an old book by the light of an oil lamp. "What do you want, novice?" he asked wearily, as if seeing me tired him. As forthright as I could be, I said, "I understand that Shams of Tabriz is leaving soon, master. I want to go with him. He might need company on the way." "I didn't know you cared for him so much," the master said suspiciously. "Or is it because you are looking for ways to avoid your tasks in the kitchen? Your trial is not over yet. You can hardly be called a dervish." "Perhaps going on a journey with someone like Shams is my trial," I suggested, knowing that it was a bold thing to say but saying it anyhow. The master lowered his gaze, lapsing into contemplation. The longer his silence, the more I was convinced he would scold me for my insolence and call the cook to keep a better eye on me. But he did no such thing. Instead he looked at me forlornly and shook his head. "Perhaps you were not created for life in a lodge, my son. After all, out of every 7 novices that set out on this path, only one remains. My feeling is you are not fit to be a dervish and need to look for your kismet elsewhere. As for accompanying Shams on his journey, you will have to ask him about that." Thus giving me notice, Baba Zaman closed the subject with a polite but dogged gesture of his head and went back to his book. I felt sad and small, but strangely liberated. Shams. B. Akdad, September 30, 1243. Battling the winds, my horse and I sped away at the crack of dawn. Only once did I stop to look back. The dervish lodge resembled a bird's nest hidden among mulberry trees and shrubs. For a while Baba Zaman's weary face kept flickering across my mind. I knew he was concerned about me. But I saw no real reason for that. I had embarked on an inner journey of love. How could any harm come out of that? It was my 10th rule: east, west, south, or north makes little difference. No matter what your destination, just be sure to make every journey a journey within. If you travel within, you'll travel the whole wide world and beyond. Though I anticipated hardships ahead, that didn't worry me much. Whatever fate awaited me in Konya, I welcomed it. As a Sufi, I had been trained to accept the thorn with the rose, the difficulties with the beauties of life. Hence followed another rule: the midwife knows that when there is no pain, the way for the baby cannot be opened and the mother cannot give birth. Likewise, for a new self to be born, hardship is necessary. Just as clay needs to go through intense heat to become strong, love can only be perfected in pain. The night before I left the dervish lodge, I opened all the windows in my room to let the sounds and the smells of the darkness waft in. By the flickering light of a candle, I cut my long hair. Thick clusters of it fell to the floor. I then shaved my beard and mustache and got rid of my eyebrows. When done, I inspected the face in the mirror, now brighter and younger. Without any hair, my face was cleared of a name, age, or gender. It had no past or future, sealed forever in this moment. "Your journey is already changing you," said the master when I went to his room to say goodbye. "And it hasn't even started yet." "Yes, I realized," I said softly. "It is another one of the 40 rules, the quest for love changes us. There is no seeker among those who search for love who has not matured on the way. The moment you start looking for love, you start to change within and without." With a slight smile, Baba Zaman took out a velvet box and handed it to me. Inside, I found 3 things: a silver mirror, a silk handkerchief, and a glass flask of ointment. "These items will help you on your journey. Use them when need be. If you ever lose self-esteem, the mirror will show your inner beauty. In case your reputation is stained, the handkerchief will remind you of how pure your heart is. As for the balm, it will heal your wounds, both inside and outside." I caressed each object, closed the box, and thanked Baba Zaman. Then there was nothing else to say. As the birds chirped and tiny dewdrops hung from the branches with the first light of the morning, I mounted my horse. I set off toward Konya, not knowing what to expect but trusting the destiny that the Almighty had prepared for me. The novice. Baghdad, September 30, 1243. Behind Shams of Tabriz, I rode my stolen horse. Hard as I tried to keep a safe distance between us, it soon proved impossible to trail him without making myself apparent. When Shams stopped at a bazaar in Baghdad to refresh himself and buy a few things for the road, I decided to make myself known and threw myself in front of his horse. "Ginger-haired ignoramus, what are you doing there lying on the ground?" Shams exclaimed from his horse, looking half amused, half surprised. I knelt, clasped my hands, and